Then Saturn whips the rest of the flock and tries to break Riggs' arm, which is funny because Saturn wouldn't be where he is right now if he would have just broke the motherfucker's fingers in the first place. Gene barges into a green room. Out comes Scott Steiner in just his boxers. He's with Buff Bagwell, who's wearing black oversized NWO top hat and white NWO overalls.
I remember that gear.
It's just not a good look when Scott Steiner just comes out in his boxers.
Yeah, like, what are you doing in there?
By law, I gotta tell you that I'm a 3-time world karate champion. But since Smiley's a brother, like Miller's a brother.
I like how when he said that, but since you're a brother, like I'm a brother, and then he looked at the crowd.
If they really wanted to play the drunk angle, they would have had Hall puke on him or something. Like get him in the double arm submission and just puke on Coney. I've never seen Hall in this state before. This is embarrassing. And I assume he did because we never saw it.
Yeah, we did never see it, but I wonder what the ref was thinking because Hogan's
right
yelling
there.
it, and he's right there. Like, is he supposed to pretend he didn't hear it?
WCW Fall Brawl War Games 1998. We are in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We start off with the customary video. Team Hollywood is featured, which is Hogan, Bret Hart, and Stevie Ray. Then we see Team Wolfpack, which is Kevin Nash, Sting, and Lex Luger, the 2005 Hall of Fame inductee. Then we get Team WCW, which is the Warrior, Piper, and DDP. And that is it. Probably took them a whole 5 minutes to edit that video together. And Mike Tenay, Tony Schiavone, Bobby the Brain Heenan are on commentary. Schiavone says they were just given the rule for War Games. New rules need to be established because we have 3 teams this year instead of 2. Schiavone says that we already know the first 2 men starting the match, and that there was a lottery in the back earlier, and those 2 men will be Bret the Hitman Hart and Diamond Dallas Page. And he says after Hart and DDP start fighting, that's when shit really starts hitting the fan. The rest of the participants are just to be selected at random, by team, by captain. Then Schiavone says essentially War Games can end before all 9 men even get into the match. Tenay says the most important rule change is that the winner of this year's War Games gets to face Goldberg at Halloween Havoc for the World Heavyweight title. He also says the 2 men starting the match, Hart and Page, will have a distinct advantage, but he doesn't say what that is right now. And Schiavone then says something went down earlier backstage, so we cut to the footage, and we see a big commotion. Then Ernest the Cat Miller is making a half-assed attempt to attack someone, but security is holding him back. And if you didn't blink, you would have seen Miller was going after Norman Smiley. They stopped everything to show us that footage. Yep. So they cut back to the commentary team. Schiavone briefly addresses the footage. He had to stop everything to show us, and then tells Heenan, Hart, and Page can end the War Games match before the other men get involved. And Heenan says anyone in the match can be champion, so it can go either way. And then they cut to Mean Gene on the entrance ramp. Gene hypes up the match between Malenko and Mr. Perfect, and then Steiner versus Steiner, and then finally Raven versus Saturn. And then Chris Jericho interrupts. Jericho says he has a big scoop. Apparently on Thunder, Jericho showed backstage footage of himself, but there was someone watching who didn't like it, and that person was Bill Goldberg. And Jericho calls Goldberg a whiner, who called Jericho on the cell phone one day, and Jericho told Goldberg to put his money where his mouth is, and Goldberg accepted. So tonight, we will see for the first time Bill Goldberg versus Chris Jericho, title versus title. Well, Gene immediately thinks Jericho's full of shit, but Jericho assures Gene that Goldberg has been calling all day whining and complaining. So I guess that's good enough for Gene.
Well, he did say, I haven't heard anything. I got to talk to Goldberg about this.
Well, Jericho says he's taking Goldberg's belt, breaking the streak, and becoming the first double champion. And then a Goldberg chant breaks out. So they're excited. So we start off with the Dancing Fools versus the British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I have no idea why they haven't mashed the Dancing Fools theme up yet. Just seems like a wasted opportunity to me.
And they come out separately too, so they can do their own shtick.
Which is the same shtick. And there's no Tokyo Magnum.
Yep, I guess he's already off the team.
Which that's disappointing. He was my favorite Dancing Fool. So Bulldog and Alex Wright start. They didn't do anything. And Bulldog moved around like an aging strong man. And for some reason, Disco Inferno was made to look competitive with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So Bulldog and Neidhart had to double team Disco to slow him down. And for some reason, Alex Wright beat the shit out of British Bulldog. And then he danced. Bulldog ends up dumping Disco out of the ring. When he's the legal man, Neidhart puts Disco in a tree of woe on the guardrail. Tenay called Neidhart Neidville, and Heenan gave him shit for it. Then Bulldog and Neidhart beat Disco's ass. Neidhart bit him a few times. I think he bit him in the face. Then Bulldog tugs on the top rope to launch Neidhart into Disco Inferno like a missile. I seem to remember Bret Hart doing that to Neidhart in the WWF.
Bret Hart.
They were the Hart
You mean
Foundation.
he was the one getting thrown?
Well, no, I don't know.
Bret Hart throwing Jim the Anvil?
Bret Hart's a strong dude.
Not that strong.
He's the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be.
There's no way.
He could pick up Neidhart with one hand.
I have a hard time believing he would body slam him. It'd be like Luger slamming Yokozuna.
Oh, come on.
Also, just to point out, you know, Jim the Anvil and the British Bulldog, how they were announced, they were like 3 pounds apart or something like that. So it's amazing how different weight can look.
I don't know. Bulldog looked kind of chunky.
He was kind of thick, but he still had his muscles.
Well, anyway, Disco sidestepped the Neidhart missile and gets Wright with the tag. Wright starts running wild. Neidhart attacks Alex Wright from behind, slowing his momentum down. And then Bulldog gets Alex Wright up for the power slam. Disco stops it. Then Disco and Wright hit Bulldog with a double clothesline. Then they do something stupid where the ref ended up hitting the mat so Wright can run over him. And then Wright ends up running into Disco, who's standing on the ropes on the apron. And then Bulldog hits Disco with a running power slam after fucking up a couple times at first. And then, got the 1, 2, 3. No idea why Disco and Alex Wright were booked so strong against the British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I seriously doubt the Dancing Fools have a run with the tag titles in their future.
Yeah, I thought it was a little too competitive.
And yeah, Bulldog looked fat and out of shape.
I'm sure he's at the end of his career at this point.
Well, we go back to Mean Gene. He's in the corridors of the arena. He says there's a rumor circulating that Scott Steiner has no intention of meeting Rick Steiner in the ring tonight, and Mean Gene aims to get to the bottom of it. Well, Gene barges into a green room. Out comes Scott Steiner in just his boxers. He's with Buff Bagwell, who's wearing a black oversized NWO top hat and white NWO overalls.
I remember that gear.
I do too. It's just not a good look when Scott Steiner just comes out in his boxers.
Yeah, it was like, what are you doing in there?
Well, Steiner says he has a lot of fans in Winston-Salem, then shows off a Band-Aid on his arm, says, as you can see, I'm injured. I also got ice on my back, too. And Bagwell reveals that they have a document signed by their doctor, Cecil Schwartz, that states Scott Steiner can't compete tonight due to injury. Well, Gene wants to see the document because his bullshit meter is going off. So he gets the document in his hands and he immediately runs into J.J. Dillon with it because he just so happens to be nearby. Well, Dillon says it's unfortunate that Bagwell went through all the trouble to drum up this bogus document, and he tells Steiner he's run out of excuses, he has to face his brother tonight or be barred from wrestling forever, and a bullshit doctor's excuse won't change that fact. Dillon tears up the Cecil Schwartz document and walks off, tossing it in the air behind him. And Bagwell and Steiner chase Dillon, and Mean Gene is all like, "Aw, yeah." So we have Chris Jericho versus Goldberg. Title versus title. Streak is on the line. And I guess Goldberg is doing his big grand entrance at this point because Jericho mocked it. And he was escorted by his security team, Ralphus, and the guy from Eastbound and Down. So Jericho got lost on the way to the ring, tried to set up Goldberg Pyro, but it failed, and he threw a fit about it. He also kind of threw a fit going to the ring, too. He's like, "Where's the entrance?"
Yeah, so they're walking through the back and they turn one way, it's a dead end, they go back. By the way, this is all like during his entrance, like the theme song is almost played through from this whole thing. And it's like, oh, it's this way. And then they walk there and open the door and it's to the outside, like literally the outside of the arena where the production trucks are and stuff. And then they got to turn around and they're still trying to find their way.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like, especially when they walked almost to the outside, there was just people right there. They could have just said, where's the...
It would have kind of been funny if they walked around to the front of the building to go in where the fans going.
Yeah. And then like go down the stairs.
Well, then Goldberg's music hits. The crowd goes wild. After a few crowd reaction shots, the sparklers that didn't work for Jericho go off. And a little bald man is revealed. He's wearing a toy championship belt. And then Jericho beats the shit out of the little Goldberg while fans chant bullshit and Goldberg. Then Tiny Goldberg speared Jericho and got a legit pop. It was probably the pop of the night. Jericho loses his temper and stomps out Tiny Goldberg before locking in the Lion Tamer for the submission. Then he holds in the Lion Tamer for a really long time, and then he talks shit in the camera. And then Jericho is handed both belts, his TV title and the toy belt that little Goldberg was wearing, and then he tears up Tiny Goldberg's little title. And then he says he's now the World Heavyweight Champion, and that is it.
A little entertaining. I thought it did go on a little long, though.
A little bit.
A lot of these matches had some shenanigans, if you will.
Almost all of them.
This was just another one. Yeah. Like, what shit are they going to pull here?
Right. Well, we go to the internet position. Tony the Tiger is talking to Rick Steiner about the match with his brother. Rick said he's got to do whatever he has to do in the ring to teach his brother a lesson. Then we cut to an interview Mike Tenay was conducting outside the arena. I guess it was earlier. He's talking to the Armstrong brothers, Scott and Steve. Ernest the Cat Miller interrupts, wondering why the Armstrongs are being interviewed when he's the 3-time world karate champion. The Armstrongs say they never get interviewed and would appreciate if Miller showed some class and let them continue. Miller says, you know what? I'll show you some class. He starts to make his exit. Well, Tenay continues the interview with the Armstrongs, and then in the background, you can see Miller just sneak up behind the camera shot, and then he karates the shit out of the Armstrongs. Kicked one in the face when he wasn't looking. And Norman Smiley gets involved for some reason, and they basically reenact the footage we saw earlier. And then, yeah, they made a match out of that. So we had Norman Smiley versus Ernest Miller. Before the match, Miller grabs a mic, tells Smiley that by law, he has to tell him that he's a 3-time world karate champion, which I had no idea. That was news to me.
I thought there was a thing like, oh, you have to disclose you're a black belt, or maybe it was just like people who are black belts do that. Not that I've had a lot of running ins with black belts, but
well, there's the guy that, well, by law, I have to tell you that these hands are legal weapons, which is like, it's called assault, of course.
Yeah. Before we do this, I need to tell you by law. Yeah, because that's going to make it better.
Right. I think that's what he was doing. Either way, it was funny. I enjoyed it. By law, I got to tell you that I'm a 3-time world karate champion. He says he can take a man apart in 5 seconds. But since Smiley's a brother, like Miller's a brother.
I like how when he said that, he was like, but since you're a brother, like I'm a brother, and then he looked at the crowd.
He says he's going to give Smiley 5 seconds to get out of the ring. Miller says he's going to turn his back, count to 5, and when he turns back around, Smiley better be a memory or Smiley's going to get eaten alive. So Miller turns around, starts counting to 5. Of course, Smiley doesn't leave, and then he beats the shit out of Miller when he turns around. So they go outside the ring. Miller hits a super kick when the ref distracts Smiley. And after throwing him into the guardrail, Miller throws Smiley back in the ring, starts kicking the shit out of him. Smiley tries to fight, but Miller just karates Smiley some more and follows up with a Muay Thai knee strikes. And Smiley catches Miller with a belly-to-back suplex, and he starts to fire up. Miller starts begging Smiley off. He tries to do the Black Power thing with him, which I thought was funny. He had like this optimistic smile. He's like, come on. And Smiley just starts choking Miller, but he gets thumbed in the eye. They kind of go back and forth, but Miller has it locked up with his karate. He even hit Smiley with a judo throw. And Smiley tries to make another comeback. He hits Miller with a suplex, then sits Miller on the top rope, and I think he's trying to go for a belly-to-belly suplex. But Miller fights out, hits the feliner twice. Well, 1.5, because I think only a toenail got Smiley with the first attempt. And 1, 2, 3.
It was ambitious, though. Like, he tried to do it from the top rope. That was ambitious.
Miller continued to say after the match that he's the greatest, and he walks off. And then commentary said that this was a big win for Miller. I don't remember seeing Smiley in a match ever, so I don't see how this was a big win.
Yeah, I think they said this was like his... Well, they didn't say it was his debut match, but yeah, he's definitely not been on pay-per-view at least, maybe on TV.
We get a Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner hype video. Shows Scott turning on Rick and joining the NWO, then dyeing his hair. Rick says Scott either makes up with him or gets his ass whooped. Well, Scott comes out, says he's sorry, wants to be Steiner Brothers again. Rick tells Scott that if he stabs him in the back, he'll hunt Scott down until he dies. Well, apparently not 5 seconds after that, Brian Adams attacked Rick with a baseball bat and does a Papa Shango shoulder breaker to Rick on the floor. Then Bagwell comes out in a wheelchair, starts stomping out Rick, while Scott grabs a chair and beats the shit out of him with it. I guess Scott replaced Rick with Bagwell, who made fun of Rick. Then Rick creamed Scott's arm with the chair. Cut to the last pay-per-view when Scott was in the gurney with the tubes in the brink of death. And Dylan gave Scott the ultimatum that he has to wrestle or he's banned for life. And that brings us to Scott Steiner versus Rick Steiner. So Scott comes out with Bagwell, of course. And Rick has a new theme, which is pretty meh. And the bell rang. Scott stalls for a long-ass time. He gets on the apron, tells the ref to back Rick up, who's already touching the other ropes on the other side of the ring, which I thought was funny. Finally, Scott gets in the ring. They go at it with iron skillets they call fists. And eventually, Rick comes out on top, starts whooping Scott's ass. Scott tries to fight back. Rick starts no-selling, and Scott just runs to the floor. Rick kicks Scott's ass on the floor. Scott tried to run through the crowd, but Rick wouldn't let him do it. And then he let Scott run back to the ring, though, and Bagwell distracts the referee from the floor. Scott promptly kicks Rick in the dick. And he starts kicking Rick's ass in and out of the ring. Scott goes for a double underhook powerbomb, but Rick blocks it and hits Scott with a DDT. And Rick goes for a top rope move. Bagwell hits the apron, so Rick stops doing what he's doing to strangle the fucker. And then he shoves him face first in the steel ring post, and Bagwell collapses to the apron. And Scott recovers, tosses Rick out of the ring, rams him shoulder first into the steel steps, then throws Rick back into the ring. But Rick recovers, starts kicking Scott's ass again. Then Scott inexplicably stops what he's doing to tend to Bagwell, who's still lying on the apron. Rick tries to continue to fight, but Rick says, "No, my friend's hurt." Bagwell claims his neck is hurt. Rick backs off. Ref calls out medical people. The crowd starts chanting bullshit. So medical comes out. They start tending to Bagwell. Rick starts buying it and asking if Bagwell's okay. Then commentary starts falling for it. Some folks come out with a gurney and Bagwell stretchered out. Then Scott leaves with Bagwell while Rick just awkwardly follows behind. Then Bagwell leaves in an ambulance. Scott leaves with him. Rick turns to leave. And then Bagwell and Scott jump out of the ambulance and just jump Rick. And then they're pulled off pretty quickly by security. Didn't do anything cool like throw Rick through a car or anything. So all that for Scott not to have to wrestle Rick. Like, I feel like they could have just been just as effective by jumping him during his entrance or something and save a buttload of time.
Yeah, they did stay with this quite a while. I initially missed it. I'm like, what the hell happened? I thought they were going to do a replay. They never did a replay. So I had to rewind it and see what happened. And then I finally saw, oh, okay, it's an angle. But yeah, they definitely stayed with it.
Well, Shivani said there's a new form of jerk and it's called a buff.
There's that Shivani.
Silver King versus Juventud Guerrera. This is for the Cruiserweight title. Juvi wrestled wearing a dog tag. I guess that automatically made him a babyface. Silver King whistled a lot. I guess that's where Escobar got it from. And then said "ay ay ay" when Juvi had him in an armbar, which I thought was funny. He's like "ay ay ay." Juvi eventually got serious, took the dog tags off, and then they just started trading leg kicks. Juvi did Rey Mysterio's Frankenstein roll up. Shivani nutted himself, says we should go back and watch it in slow motion. Juvi hit a reverse Frankensteiner from the top rope, which I guess is called a Poison Rana. And then Juvi signals for a Juvi driver. Silver King counters with a small package. Juvi kicked out. Silver King goes for a springboard moonsault, but no one's home. Juvi hits the Juvi driver, the 450 splash, 1, 2, 3. Couldn't get in this match to save my life. Silver King. Silver King looks like a guy who loses his girls to better looking men.
Yeah, I couldn't get into this match. Honestly, I forgot who won. Well, I mean, I knew who won, but everything about this match I forgot.
I'm not really digging this whole Juvi babyface thing.
I'm okay with it. I just don't think, I don't know. It was the other guy I had a problem with. Like, who the hell's this guy?
He's
Yeah.
Silver King. Unfortunately, he passed away.
Oh, rest in peace.
Talk your shit now.
I said rest in peace.
We go back to the internet location. Tony the Tiger is talking to Conan about Scott Hall, who was like a brother to K-Dog. Aren't they in different NWO factions?
Yeah.
So I don't understand. Anyway, Conan says he still has love for Hall, but needs to leave the personal shit he's dealing with at home. Hall interrupts, drink in hand, visibly intoxicated, tells Conan to stay out of his business. Conan tells Hall that when he wrestles him, he needs to be professional. Like, aren't these guys supposed to be gangbangers?
Who, Conan?
The NWO, aren't they supposed to be a gang?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I just don't understand what this professional shit. Anyway, Hall ends up throwing a drink in Conan's face. Conan starts to run around the table, but then just stops. And that's that. This was obviously when WCW decided to profit off of Hall's drinking issues.
Yes, they did.
All right, well, buckle up for this one. We take a look at Raven and Saturn before we look at them wrestle, I guess. Actually, it's Lodi and Saturn. For some reason, Lodi is wrestling Saturn. Lodi tells Saturn if Saturn beats him, then Lodi will leave the flock. But when Lodi beats Saturn, Saturn becomes Lodi's slave until Fall Brawl. We warp zone to another in-ring segment. Lodi's telling Saturn he can't touch Raven or Kidman. Warp zone to another in-ring segment. Canyon's involved now. He's making fun of Saturn for having pride and integrity. Yeah, pride and integrity. It's kind of when Canyon jumped the shark for me. And then officially calls Saturn out. Canyon gets in Saturn's face, screaming at him to hit him. We warp zone to another in-ring segment. Scotty Riggs is down. Raven tells Saturn to break Riggs' fingers, or Saturn has to break his honor. And Saturn says, there is no honor in breaking this kid's fingers. It's worth noting that Saturn is just a year older than Riggs.
Good for him.
Well, Raven says Saturn has to break Riggs' fingers or let Raven break his fingers for honor and loyalty or some shit. And then Canyon attacks Saturn from behind, and Raven breaks Saturn's fingers. We warp zone to another in-ring segment, and it's just Saturn and Canyon and some other dude. Turned out to be Nick Dinsmore, aka Eugene. And now is when we find out that Saturn did indeed lose to Lodi and became Lodi's slave to close out the first in-ring segment that we warp zoned from. So Lodi's not around to say Saturn can't hit anybody. So he beats the shit out of Canyon. Dinsmore bailed. We warp zone to another segment, and Saturn's fingers are magically healed, and he's breaking Canyon's thumb now. And Saturn grabs a mic, tells Canyon he needs to break the other 9 fingers. Out comes the flock. Raven tells the flock to get him. Kidman and Horace head to the ring. Saturn kicks Horace's ass, then kicks someone else's ass. I swear they said the name was Flea, but I couldn't find anything on him, so I don't know.
I don't think I caught it.
Then Saturn whips the rest of the flock and tries to break Riggs' arm, which is funny because Saturn wouldn't be where he is right now if he would have just broke the motherfucker's fingers in the first place. He grabs a mic, tells Raven that he needs to focus on his own career now. Didn't he say that like 100 pay-per-views ago?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Raven tells Saturn that it's not happening because after Fall Brawl, Saturn will be a Raven's servant forever. So that was a lot.
Yeah, it was really in-depth, that video package.
The only thing I really got from that is Canyon just doesn't need to talk. So we have Raven versus Saturn. Raven's rules. If Saturn wins, Raven must set the flock free. If Raven wins, Saturn must be Raven's slave forever. Also, Canyon will be handcuffed to ringside. So sure enough, Canyon comes out in handcuffs and he's protesting being handcuffed ringside. Says he's not the Elephant Man. Not sure what his bitch is since his thumb's broken anyway. So if anything, he wouldn't have to get involved physically. Anyway, Canyon's finally handcuffed to the ring post. The ref has handed the key to the handcuffs, and I'm sure that won't come into play later at all. And Saturn comes out. Raven grabs the mic, tells Saturn he's been an embarrassment for far too long. And tonight begins the beginning of Saturn's permanent indentured servitude. Quote the Raven, nevermore. And then Saturn feels he needs to say something. He says, Raven, this is about honor, and you have none. Doesn't matter tonight if I win or lose, because I know I'll still keep my integrity. Good stuff. Prolific words from Saturn. Then the match starts. They go back and forth. Raven tries to suplex Saturn out of the ring and ends up getting dumped on the floor. Then Saturn hits a suicide dive. Lodi interferes and gives Raven the upper hand. Raven gets Saturn back in the ring, hits a couple top rope elbow drops, but that doesn't put Saturn away. And then Raven locks in a sleeper hold, which Saturn countered with a jawbreaker. For some reason, Raven was the one to make the pin attempt from that, so I'm not sure how that worked out. It's like if you hit me and knock me on the ground and then I pin you. So Raven stomps on Saturn, celebrates for no reason, and steals Canyon's rolling Russian leg sweeps. He makes a series of pin attempts, but ends up getting kneed in the balls. Raven chop blocks Saturn in the knee, then Lodi hands Raven a chair. Raven does the dropped hold to the chair. And Horace and Sick Boy and Riggs come out carrying a table, and they're followed by Kidman. Table gets set up ringside, which distracts the ref. I don't know why, it's a fucking Raven's Rules match. So in the ring, Raven has Saturn down. Kidman climbs the top rope to finish Saturn off. Kidman leaps off the top rope and nails Raven with a missile dropkick. Then he runs away before the Flock can kill him. Then Saturn hits Raven with the Death Valley driver, but Lodi is distracting the ref, and that gives Raven enough time to kick out. So Saturn starts running wild on Raven. He locks in the rings of Saturn, but Lodi breaks up the hold. Then Raven grabs Saturn from behind so Lodi can hit him. And of course, Saturn ends up kicking Raven in the dick again. And he crotches Lodi on the turnbuckle. Then Saturn whips Raven into the corner. Ref gets sandwiched and collapses right where Canyon is. Sure enough, Canyon, he digs his hand into the ref's pocket, frees himself from the ring post. He hits Saturn with a flatliner, rolls Raven on top of him for the cover, goes back to the floor, handcuffs himself back to the ring post, and then revives the ref. But Saturn kicked out and got a hell of a pot for it. So Saturn kicks Raven in the dick a third time, and he hits Lodi, who's still crouched on the turnbuckle, with a Death Valley driver through the table that was set up ringside. Raven hits an even flow, and Saturn just kicks out of that. So Raven goes for another even flow. Saturn reverses it, and he hits another Death Valley driver 1, 2, 3. And every single match these guys have had has been a Ravens rules match, so this doesn't feel like an appropriate blow-off.
Well, he's free from the Flock now. Also, they kind of switched it up on us. As you recapped in the beginning, if Saturn wins, then the Flock has to get set free. And then during the match, they kept saying, oh, this is only about Saturn now. He's just trying to set himself free. So which one is?
I don't think they know.
They're trying to backtrack.
So I had no idea why Saturn would do a Death Valley driver to Lodi and not Raven through the table.
I don't know. But it was a hot finish. And
I think I would have liked this better if we weren't currently in the era of never-ending forever feuds or whatever.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those.
Well, suddenly Tony Schiavone is handed a note, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan successfully underwent surgery, and they removed a tumor the size of a football from his kidney. And I would have to assume the entire kidney would have had to have been removed then. It's a football size.
Yeah.
And then we take a look at Mr. Perfect and Dean Malenko fighting in a steel cage on Nitro. Malenko has Perfect right where he wants him. Perfect escapes a Texas Cloverleaf attempt, and the ref gets knocked out. Later, we see Malenko get Perfect in the Cloverleaf with the referee still out. Bischoff comes running out with Stevie Ray and unlocks the cage. Rick Rude just beats the shit out of Malenko. Ref calls for a disqualification, even though it's a cage match. Rude takes the ref out, counts the pin himself, then declares Perfect the winner. And Perfect and Rude and Stevie Ray attempt to assassinate Malenko with the steel cage door. But out comes Arn Anderson. He runs wild all over the bad guys. There's a funny moment where he and Stevie Ray took their shirts off. Anderson didn't go for the full effect, though. He had an undershirt. We warp zone to an in-ring segment where Anderson and Malenko are talking. Anderson said the last time he talked to Malenko wasn't ready to represent the Four Horsemen. He says the Four Horsemen may never return, and hell, he might not be the one to say it. But he says tonight he would be proud to call Malenko a horseman. They hold up the fours, and it looked like Malenko was about to cry. And that brings us to Mr. Perfect versus Dean Malenko. And Perfect comes out with Rude. Surprisingly, Anderson doesn't come out with Malenko. And Malenko just kicks Perfect's ass. He tosses Perfect out of the ring so Rude can get his ass kicked too. It's kind of funny watching a not at all tall Dean Malenko just manhandle these two big Minnesotans.
Yeah.
Malenko and Perfect get back into the ring. Malenko specifically targets Perfect's knee as a tribute to Arn Anderson. Malenko goes for a cloverleaf. Perfect gouges his eyes and starts getting some offense in, but Malenko only starts targeting Perfect's knee. Eventually, Perfect says, fuck this, starts to leave with Rude. It looked like a cameraman tripped over the stairs. Did you happen to catch that?
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
Well, Malenko gives chase, gets Perfect back in the ring. Perfect starts begging Malenko off, and Malenko just drop kicks the injured knee. Rude nails Malenko from behind when the ref isn't looking, and Perfect goes for the perfect plex, but his knee's too fucked up to execute the move. Malenko does a perfect plex to Mr. Perfect. Rude has just had enough of this, slides back into the ring, beats Malenko's ass. Then Rude and Perfect start jumping Malenko. And Anderson comes out, but Anderson must have forgotten to eat his spinach tonight because he just gets his ass kicked. In fact, they take him out with no effort at all. Then Rude and Perfect attack Arn Anderson's arm because he has an arm wrestling match with Eric Bischoff next Thunder. And I guess Flair's return to the ring is in line over that. And then the bad guys leave, the good guys lying in pain. This should have been better.
Well, you had Perfect selling the knee, so it's
Yeah.
good in that fact.
I mean, it wasn't horrible. There wasn't a whole lot of bullshit. Everything made sense. It just, I don't know. I was expecting like a 10-star classic.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because it didn't go long enough, or I don't know what it was. But yeah, I was okay with it. The ending, of course, they had to do their thing. I was just waiting for it at this point. It was like, oh, something's going to happen.
Right.
They did say, and I thought about it while they said it, Rick Rude had retired because of herniated disc or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does sure take a lot of bumps, or does a lot of stuff for herniated disc.
Well, he seems to give a lot of offense. He doesn't seem to take a lot of it.
Yeah, but he was dropping elbows and
Oh, yeah, that's true.
a little bit weird there, but we expected it, kind of.
Well, after that, we have Scott Hall versus Conan. Hall comes out drinking. Virgil's with him. Hall forgets which ring to enter. He's stumbling, and Virgil keeps checking on him. And Hall grabs a mic, sneaks a sip from the cup he's brought out, does a perfect survey, completely killing the drunk illusion for me. Like, he doesn't slur his words or anything. Conan comes out and rolls off his 100 catchphrases. Bell rings. Hall keeps making Conan chase him between the two rings. Conan yelled Odele after just about every offensive move he had. Hall fucks with Conan when they do the test of strength, and then Conan just socks him. Conan stops Hall into the crack between the two rings. Hall crawls under the ring and tries to come up from behind Conan, but Conan didn't fall for it. Hall stops everything to take a drink and gets Conan into a double arm submission. And if they really wanted to play the drunk angle, they would have had like Hall puke on him or something. Like get him in the double arm submission and just puke on Conan.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen Hall in this state before. This is embarrassing. Well, think about Conan. How do you think he feels? This is his brother. So Conan fights out of the arm submission. Hall kicked him in the dick and hits a fall away slam. Hall locks in the abdominal stretch. Instead of using Virgil for leverage, he asked him for a drink. Hall hits Conan with a belly to back suplex from the top rope. Goes to signal for the razor's edge, but stops because he wants another drink, which he did. He got that drink. Conan recovered, hit the face buster, locks in the tequila sunrise for the submission. And then we see Conan walking away, and Hall just lost. No big deal.
Sad to see Hall tapping out. Also, you can say he's kind of a jobber in WCW. Outside of that one battle royal, he's like losing to everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. He's more of a tag team specialist for sure.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know why Conan's going over.
They're just trying to push him, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I think Conan's best run was when he was U.S. champion forever and a day ago.
Well, he's Wolfpack. You know, the Wolfpack's got to get their wins in.
That's true.
Because they had to go with the hot hand, which was the Wolfpack at the time.
Well, finally, that brings us to the War Games match, which means the winner of this match earns the right to face Bill Goldberg at Halloween Havoc. And we got to the ring, and Buffer's there to introduce an event like no other in the annals of professional wrestling history. It lists off the 9 participants without one cool thing to say about them. Then the cage lowers while Buffer reads the rules. Really expensive person to bring out just to do a nothing job. He listed the names and then he said the rules, which Tony Schiavone just did earlier in the program. So, okay. So in my feed, Hart and DDP came out to the cage lowering music, which I thought was really weird. In fact, they all came out to the cage lowering music.
Yeah, I don't remember any theme songs.
Okay. So Hart and DDP started, and they tussled back and forth. DDP went for a diamond cutter and failed. Hart hit a DDT. That's about it. Stevie Ray came in with no music, and he basically just beats DDP for 2 minutes. And DDP hit a double clothesline, but really it was all Stevie Ray. Then Sting came out. Sting goes after Stevie Ray for 2 minutes while DDP and Hart fight, and DDP uppercutted Hart square in the balls. Then Roddy Piper came out and does exactly what I was hoping. He was just wailing on anything that moved. And Stevie Ray no-sold a Piper attack, so Hot Rod bit him in the face. Then DDP and Piper backed into each other, and then they started slugging, which threw a whole wrinkle in the whole team thing for me.
It was a team, but it wasn't a team. I don't know. Because, you know, they kept saying, whoever gets the pinfall. So why are they teams?
Why not just have a 9-man War Games match?
Just more confusion.
Well, Luger comes out next. Nothing happened for almost 2 whole minutes. Then Piper gets Stevie Ray in a sleeper hold alone in one of the rings. Not one of the 6 men in the other ring tried to stop it. Then Nash came out, and then Hogan comes out 30 seconds early and attacks Nash with a slapjack from behind. Nash was about to jackknife Stevie Ray before Hogan saved him. And Hogan takes out Piper with the slapjack, and he and Stevie Ray unite. Then we see Bret Hart in the torture rack, and he didn't immediately submit. In fact, when Luger put him down, Hart went after Hogan. So what are we doing? Hart should be out of the match.
Yeah, it should have been over at that point.
So yeah, Hogan and Hart are fighting, I guess. So like, again, why have teams? It's weird. So Stevie Ray and Hogan stand tall because of the slapjack. Then Hogan gives Nash a leg drop. And instead of going for the win, which Stevie Ray seemed to reluctantly allow, Hogan just poses. And then he hits another leg drop. And Hogan talks to Stevie Ray for a second, then goes for the pin. Then smoke just starts filling the ring. And then Warrior is standing in the ring a whole minute early, beating his chest ferociously. And Hogan just takes him out. He stomps the shit out of Warrior. Then more smoke fills the cage. And Hogan is left holding Warrior's coat. And Stevie Ray looks confused as fuck. Or regretful. Either way. And then Warrior comes out again. And he beats the shit out of Hogan. Stevie Ray got involved. Warrior starts warrioring up on Stevie Ray. And Disciple pulls a willing Hogan out of the cage. And they lock it back up. And Hogan tells Disciple to knock the... he tells the Disciple to knock the referee that's overseeing the cage door out. And I assume he did because we never saw it.
Yeah, we did never see it. But I wonder what the ref was thinking because, Hogan's
He's right
yelling
there.
it, and he's right there. Like, is he supposed to pretend he didn't hear it?
Wait, is he talking about me?
Yeah, wait, what?
Well, Hogan starts to leave with Disciple, and then Warrior starts talking shit through the cage, and then begins to kick his way out. He frees himself. He beats the shit out of Hogan and his friends on the entrance ramp, and then security pulls the men apart. And then back in the War Games match, DDP just hit Stevie Ray with a Diamond Cutter 1, 2, 3. And we never saw Warrior again.
Seemingly not even caring about the match.
Nope.
Only caring about getting his hands on Hogan. And I don't know, that cage spot was just funny. So Hogan's outside the cage, the Warrior's just pacing around following him. And then he climbs up to the second level of the cage, kicks it through, jumps out of the cage as Hogan and the Disciple are backing off. And then he comes around the corner limping because he just jumped from the second story. It did feel out of place being in WCW. Even though, early WCW, they had the dungeon and they were pretty kooky.
Father!
You had the Disciple playing whatever the hell he was playing.
He was the Booty Man. Oh, no, he was the Zodiac.
Yeah, the Zodiac.
Then he was the Booty Man.
Whatever the hell that thing, that was the weirdest character, but...
Well, no, remember, he was a plant for Hogan.
Oh, they explained themselves out of it?
Remember, Brother Brutai was playing the Zodiac for Hogan, and then...
Oh, yeah.
something.
But I do wonder, though, how they did the whole Warrior spot.
What do you mean?
Unless it wasn't him. Because, yes, he got attacked in the ring, and then the smoke fills up, and then he comes running from the entrance ramp. So,
I bet that was like Renegade or something.
Yeah, it was probably... Oh, we have a Warrior already. Let's just use him. Crazy War Games, though.
Oh, my God. Well, this pay-per-view received primarily negative reviews. Shocker. The Wrestling Observer News named Fall Brawl 98 as the worst major wrestling show of 1998. The only positive things I could find about the pay-per-view involved the Saturn Raven match, and that was being the only match worth checking out, and even that's a stretch. A match between the Giant and Meng was advertised on WCW.com, but obviously that didn't take place. WCW.com also advertised Juventud Guerrero versus Kaz Hayashi, but it was announced that the match would actually be Juvi versus Silver King the night before the pay-per-view on WCW Saturday night. Don't know why. So during the match between the British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart against the Dancing Fools, Bulldog severely injured his back on a trapdoor that was installed in the ring for the Ultimate Warrior's entrance later in the show.
Oh, no.
Although it had been claimed that WCW wrestlers were not informed of the trapdoor prior to the show, Disco had disputed this version of events and said that the wrestlers were made aware of the trapdoor. But yeah, this was the beginning of the end for Bulldog. If I remember correctly, he hurt his back and then he got like addicted to painkillers or some shit because his back got like, I don't know if it got infected or I don't know. It wasn't good.
Yep, that's usually how it goes.
But yeah, that was Fall Brawl 98. Our next pay-per-view is Halloween Havoc 1998. It's in the MGM Grand Arena, Paradise, Nevada. And our main event is DDP versus Goldberg. Finally, Goldberg is main eventing a pay-per-view. It's for the World Heavyweight Championship. But before that, we have WrestleMania 34, which took place in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is the second WrestleMania that was held in Louisiana. Of course, the first one was WrestleMania 30. Card was comprised of 11 matches. In the main event, which was also the main match of the Raw brand, Brock Lesnar faced Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. The main match from SmackDown was AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the WWE Championship.
Oh, great.
Other matches, Ronda Rousey made her WWE debut. She teamed with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie. Daniel Bryan returned to the ring after nearly 3 years of absence due to concussions. He teamed with Shane McMahon to face Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. We also had The Undertaker facing John Cena in an impromptu match. And Charlotte Flair defends her SmackDown Women's Championship against Asuka's undefeated streak.
Another streak.
And this will be the first time the SmackDown Tag Team titles were defended at WrestleMania. Yeah, WrestleMania 34 received mixed to positive reviews from fans and critics, with the world title matches being subjected to more negative responses. The main event between Lesnar and Reigns particularly received heavy criticism. It was decried by some as one of the worst main events in WrestleMania history. Despite this, other aspects of the show, such as the return of Daniel Bryan, the Intercontinental Championship match, the SmackDown Women's Championship matches, and the debut performance of Ronda Rousey, were widely praised. And that's our rewind.